Mass was said and sung before dawn on that Christmas morning, once upon a time at King Arthur's court in Camelot, where the noblest of lords and ladies had gathered to celebrate anew the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. Oh, they were a splendid sight to behold, those pious celebrants and partakers of the Holy Sacrament, and all in their prime then too, without blemish of the flesh or taint of the soul. Each one most gloriously and befittingly attired in richly hued robes and long deep hooded cloaks, all edged and trimmed with fur, and intricately set with rare gems from distant lands, and lustrous pearls from the deepest oceans. Though never in this land was so humble a party assembled to celebrate the Lord's Mass, and never more sincere their belief in its enduring mystery. For 15 days they communed at dawn in this way, and thereafter feasted without restraint in Camelot's great hall, which was then most festively adorned with huge swags of winter spruce and bright holly, all deftly entwined with the greenest ivy, and plaited through with ribbons of red and gold. Christmas candles flickered in abundance, and a huge well-stoked Yule fire blazed and crackled in the grate. In the galleries above, the most favoured of Camelot's minstrels plucked their harps and puffed their pipes, whilst below every kind of Christmas pleasure was enjoyed to the full. And so the days of festivity proceeded, through till the end of the year and the beginning of the next. Now it was custom on that day, when the new year first began, after Mass was duly said and done, while still it was believed the doorway to the other world stood fleetingly ajar, for the king, by way of entertainment, to request the retelling of some timeless saga or great magical adventure, and in keeping with this tradition he would not break fast until his bidding were answered. And it was then that Camelot's bards and poets came before the dais, where the comely king sat enthroned, with his young queen Guinevere and all his brave knights about him. And they sang long, as was their way, of wild enchantment and of heroic deeds, and of challenges and battles still to come. Oh, thus they were charmed on that New Year's Day, with all the wit and skill of incantation e'er conceived, and their spirits soared then, and their ever youthful souls took flight upon the swift wings of magical adventure. Though as so seamlessly those two worlds engaged, the vast oak doors of Camelot's great hall shook and heaved on their hinges, and rattled then so furiously, it were as if the devil himself had come to the door. Frenzied hooves then sounded, pounding, pounding the yard beyond, until at last Camelot's great doors crashed wide apart, and through them charged, unbridled and triumphant, the mightiest steed and most ferocious rider ever made known to mortal man. Now the hue of that man and his steed was marvellous to see, for everywhere they were coloured green, aye, from the tip of the horse's hooves to the crown of the rider's head, all were green. In the whole of Christendom that ghostly knight then bellowed, as he leapt down from his steed, there is nowhere a court so famed as Camelot, nor knights so brave or so bold as those assembled here. But I see only fresh-faced boys a-quivering here, and I dare say not one of you would dare to put me to the test. But rest assured, fearful knights, for it is not combat I seek in Camelot today, but merely a Christmas game. So if there be any here among you, bold or brave enough to accept, let him come before me now, and deal to me with my own axe, which shall thereafter belong to him, a single blow to the neck, and in return he shall receive the same from me, a year and a day from now. Well, immediately Arthur stepped forward, unwilling to sustain further insult to his court, and he grasped the axe from that ghostly knight, who straightway fell to his knees, throwing forward his long locks to expose the supple flesh of his neck. And King Arthur heaved the gleaming weapon into the air then, in readiness for the blow, when all at once young Gawain, Arthur's nephew, who loved the king more than life itself, leapt forward, crying, "Sire, you are too worthy a knight to risk your life in such a game as this. But I, who am the weakest amongst you, and whose life would be so small a loss compared to that of your own, have still to prove my worth. And so I implore you, and all the noble knights of your court, to let this challenge be mine." Well, for a long time Arthur and his knights conferred, whispering and gesturing at the head of the hall, until finally Gawain's request was granted. And with that the Green Knight knelt and revealed his neck once more. Gawain seized the glistening axe, and with a single blow severed the Green Knight's head all at once from his body. Though as it rolled, all blood drenched to the ground. The Green Knight neither flinched nor fell, but remained quite still, as if nothing at all had occurred. And incredulously then he lunged forward, all headless and blood-stained before them, and he grasped the severed head by the hair, and thrust it full face toward Gawain, and with wild green eyes a-glaring, it spoke. "Seek me at the Green Chapel, Gawain, a year and a day from now, and we shall see then how brave you truly are. There are many who know of that place's location, and if you are guided by them, you shall not fail to find me." And with no more words than these, the headless knight leapt to his mighty steed, and sped full pelt from the hall. And so it was that young Gawain took up the Green Knight's challenge, and throughout the court he was duly honoured, being seated at Arthur's own side, when finally the meal of the day was served. Well, the year passed peacefully by in Camelot, though as the seasons turned onward toward autumn, the affair was spoken of less and less. For in truth, no one believed Gawain could sustain the return blow from the Green Knight's axe. Yet young Gawain was ever mindful of the challenge ahead, and he prepared himself as best he could, and on All Saints' Day he called for his arms. Now I have heard tell that these were spectacular beyond measure, and many a fine poet has tarried long over their intricate description. But we shall say only here that Gawain bore the symbol of the endless knot upon the outer surface of his shield, and the image of the Holy Virgin upon its inner. For those were the days when the Virgin Mother was most highly revered, and so it was fitting that her image be inscribed in this way. Now the king himself led young Gawain to mass that morning, and afterwards counselled him for the ordeal ahead, whilst in the outer courtyard Camelot, Gawain's own trusty steed, was made ready for the journey. And with many fond embraces then, from all the lords and ladies of the court, the good Gawain at last set forth, and no one knew if they would ever see him alive again. Now the path ahead was a bleak and lonely one to tread, and many times Gawain's thoughts strayed back to colourful Camelot, and many times too he gazed upon the image of the Holy Virgin inscribed upon his shield, and she would appear to him then as a joyful young maiden, all purest white and deepest blue, and his spirits were uplifted then, and he rode onward with great courage and resolve. Yet there were also times along the way when he found no shelter for the night, nor food to sustain him. Faith weakened, and in desperation he cried out, and Our Lady appeared to him then, as the black-veiled, sorrowing mother of the world, praying for mercy on behalf of her children, so that they might receive his comfort in the hour of their greatest need. And by her grace, young Gawain found rest and sleep, though she appeared to him also there, arising in the depths of his dreams, though not then as the joyful virgin child, nor as the sorrowing mother of the world, but as the glorious, glorious Queen of heaven, clothed and adorned in the light of the sun, with the silver moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. And so the days and nights passed, and very soon it is Christmas Eve, and the good Gawain is on his knees, midst the bleakest of winter landscapes, faithfully reciting his creed. And in his heart he prays to be directed to some kindly dwelling place, where he might hear the singing of the Yuletide Mass. Credo in unum Deum, 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 credo in unum Deum. Patrem omnipotentem, Patrem omnipotentem, Patrem omnipotentem factorem celi et terra et in unum Dominum Jesum Christum. And most wondrously then, a splendid castle is revealed to him in the distance. Oh, and his heart leaps for joy, for truly it seems as though his prayer is answered. Well, Gawain was promptly received at that place by the merry master of the house, a bold and massive man, with wild chestnut hair and keen fiery eyes, who straightway embraced Gawain as if he were a lost son. Now at table that night, Gawain was seated in a place of honour, beside the master's own fair lady, who was very gay and lovely, with long golden hair and bright laughing eyes. At his other side, a woman of great old age was seated, who remained silent throughout, yet she, it seemed, was most truly revered amongst that company. Well, all the while the master's lady engaged Gawain in most delightful conversation, and her husband approved it knowingly, and there was square dancing and carolling and many a merry jest till very late in the evening. Yet Gawain was ever mindful of the new year soon approaching, and after 3 days of celebration he thanked his kind hosts, saying that he must leave at dawn next day. But then the Lord questioned Gawain, all eager and curious to discover what business so possessed him, that he ride out all alone at Christmas time. And Gawain admitted freely to him that he had come from King Arthur's court in Camelot to settle a New Year challenge agreed between himself and the Knight of the Green Chapel. And he urged the master boldly then, if he knew of that place, to speak out to him without delay. And the master replied that indeed he knew of such a place, not 2 miles from his castle, and he begged Gawain to remain as his guest for 3 more days, saying that his own servant would direct him to the very spot at first light on New Year's morning. And so it was agreed, and the master embraced Gawain, who was very thankful for the news. And the wine flowed freely then, and the master raised his goblet many times to the young knight, amidst all the company, welcoming him anew and anew to his house. And he toasted King Arthur's court also, and sang such high praises in its name, that no one there was left in any doubt as to the reputation of that place. Now when it was time to retire, the master detained Gawain by the fireside, and told him that he would be away hunting upon each of the 3 following days. But he reassured his guest that his fair wife would entertain him until his return. Oh, and then that merry man got it into his head to have some Christmas sport with young Gawain, and he proposed that they agree to exchange, each evening upon his return, any winnings that they might acquire during the course of their daily activities. And immediately Gawain consented, for he was much indebted to his host, and straightway fresh wine was called for, and the bargain quickly sealed. Now very early next morning, Gawain was awakened from sleep by the sound of his own chamber door slowly creaking open, and peeping then from beneath his quilts, saw none other than the lord's lovely lady entering into his room. Oh, all adorned and resplendent was she in her finery, and fair of face and supple of form, so that even Guinevere could not compare to her. Feigning sleep, for he knew not what else to do, Gawain slipped back beneath the sheets, and remained there for as long as he could, in the vain hope that that fine lady might soon depart. Oh, but she had no such intention, and rather waited at the foot of his bed, until at last he was obliged to acknowledge her, and pretending then to awaken, he stretched and yawned, and rather tentatively opened his eyes. "Good morning, kind sir," she began brightly, getting up from his bed and throwing back the heavy drapes, so that all at once the chamber was flooded with light. "One who sleeps so sound, sir, is also most easily undone." And she came close beside him then, and she whispered into his ear, so that her sweet breath fell soft and warm upon his skin. "You are my prisoner now," she informed him, "and you must do as I ask. "O dear lady," replied our courteous knight, "that I will surely do, but first, I beg you, let me rise up from my bed and dress myself more appropriately for your service." Never was a knight more suitably attired than you, dear sir, to spend the morning in communion with a lady. And saying so, she tucked him up firmly in his bed, and bade him tell her all he knew of courtly love in Camelot. Oh, but naught improper passed between those two that day, save for a soft, sweet kiss, which that lady placed upon his cheek, before her own husband returned with the vast spoils of the kill. Now, according to the terms of their agreement, the Lord presented Gawain with all that he had gained that day, and called at once for the young knight to do the same. And straightway Gawain came forward, and before all he kissed his merry host, softly and sweetly upon his cheek. Oh, and the Lord embraced him fondly, and praised him repeatedly for his integrity. Well, next day, soon as ever her husband was away, the lovely lady hurried once more to Gawain, though this time more richly and more alluringly attired than before. Oh, it was a delicate situation, as you might well imagine, and one in which Gawain's restraint was pressed to its limit. Oh, for she was so bold with him in her talk of love that day. And all the while the master of the house pursued his prey relentlessly in the field, completely unaware, or so Gawain believed, of the lovely lady's presence in his room. Oh, but again, naught improper passed between them, save for a second soft, sweet kiss, which she placed upon his cheek before her husband returned at the end of the day. Well, as before, Gawain was presented with the slaughtered meat of the day, and in return he kissed his host softly and sweetly upon his cheek, and the Lord embraced him fondly, and praised his integrity even more highly than he had done the previous night. Now on the third day all occurred as before, though not exactly as you might expect, for this time the lovely lady came to Gawain more alluringly than ever, and with all her womanly wiles pressed him to indiscretion. But again, naught improper passed between those two until late in the afternoon. Now it was then that rebuffed lady began to plead with Gawain for at least a token of love, and she begged him then most sweetly for his glove, or some such other keepsake. Oh, but the good Gawain refused her, saying that such a trifling token did not befit a lady of such high birth as she. And so she bade him accept a token from her instead, and straightway offered him a golden ring, studded all over with bright jewels. But again Gawain refused, on account of the great costliness of that ring. "If you will not have my ring, Gawain, because of its great worth, then perhaps you will accept this." And saying so, she pulled from beneath her girdle a beautiful green silken sash, Whosoever wears this sash, Gawain, shall be protected, even from the jaws of death. And straightway Gawain remembers his New Year meeting with the Knight of the Green Chapel, and in a trice he accepts the magic sash, and a third sweet kiss also, pressed fully upon his lips. And at that very instant, far away in the frozen meadows beyond, the Lord and his hounds come down without mercy upon a cornered fox which has eluded them since dawn. And all the men rejoice in the kill, crying and hallooing dementedly, as their master ripped that pitiful creature from the savage teeth of his hounds, and with many bold cries strips its hide all at once from its body. Now later that night, when at last the hunting party returned, Gawain stepped eagerly forward, and without invitation pressed upon the lips of his host the full sweet kiss that he had had from the lady. But he said nothing of the green silken sash. "My, you have done well, Gawain," exclaimed the merry lord then, "though I fear my own winnings will not compare to the treasure which you have acquired here." And with many long apologies then, he presented Gawain with the fresh hide of the fox, telling him over and over again of the difficulty he had had in tracking that creature down. And then they all made merry together, as is fitting upon New Year's Eve, enjoying rich food and strong wine and splendid Yuletide entertainment from all that were equipped to provide it. For with every second passing, Gawain is stricken at heart, for all the while the new year moves in closer and closer, and his grim fate nearer and nearer. Soon the embers burn down low, and tired guests are led to their beds. But no rest awaits Gawain that night, for all the while he is plagued and gripped with fear, and he tosses and turns the whole night through, until at last the cock crows, and he arises to meet his doom. Oh, never was a man so heavy at heart as young Gawain that day, as he sets forth from the castle, with a servant duly charged to direct him to the infamous Green Chapel. Though he rides on nevertheless, through the frozen meadows and thick forests beyond, until at last he comes to a steep ridge overlooking a bleak and eerie valley. Now for all his travels, Gawain has never once set eyes on such an ungodly place as that which lies before him now, and truly he thinks to himself that he has come to the gateway of hell itself. Oh, for the stench of death is in the air, and it clings to those men, so that their guts retch, and their horses rear up endlessly in terror. "No man has yet returned from that evil abode," cries out the servant, and he begs Gawain to turn back, promising to say naught to the lord and lady of the castle. But Gawain bids that man hold his tongue, and with great courage, befitting that of any knight of Camelot's round table, he takes up his shield, digs his spears keenly into Gringelot's white flanks, and rides down away into the valley below to seek whatever may come his way. And as our brave knight approaches, searching out that ghostly place for the Green Knight and his chapel, the sound of grating steel upon the rocks befalls his ear, and straightway he knows that the Green Knight awaits him, and that even now he prepares his weapon for the inevitable blow. And Gawain cries out bravely then, and he bids his opponent show himself and make his presence known. All at once he emerges, bolting like a man possessed from behind the rocks, all green and grim and mightier than ever before. And in his hand he brandishes a massive glinting axe, all freshly prepared for the blow. And straightway he bids Gawain prepare himself to meet his death. In a trice our knight is on his knees, and the wild man in green makes ready, hurling his weapon high into the air, and swinging it down toward Gawain, with all the force of the devil behind him. Though as that blade plunges, our young knight winces in terrible fear of his life, and instantly the man in green checks the descent of his weapon, bringing it to an abrupt halt before ever it sinks into Gawain's quivering flesh. And he rebukes the young knight harshly then, and mocks him for his cowardice, reminding him all the while of his own unflinching conduct in Camelot a year ago. Well, soon Gawain regains his courage, and prepares himself once more, and the Green Knight strikes, though again checking his plunging weapon, a mere hair's breadth away from Gawain's awaiting neck. And with many impatient words, Gawain implores the man in green to strike out without further prevarication. And so, for the third time, the Green Knight makes ready, and yelping wildly, so that his cry of triumph fills the entire valley, plunges down, but lightly, and wounding but slightly, so that the head of young Gawain remains, all but for a nick, intact. Incredulously then, Gawain clasps his hand to that wound upon his neck, and staggering all aghast to his feet, draws arms against the Green Knight, and promptly informs him of his intention to defend himself against all further attack. But at this, the Green Knight smiles fondly, and laying down his weapon says, "You have no further need of defence, young Gawain, for you have received all that was promised to you at King Arthur's court in Camelot a year ago, and whatsoever remaining debt is owed to me, by virtue of your conduct in my house, consider yourself most truly absolved." And with these words, the hue of that mighty night began to shift and change. and as if by magic, everything about him was utterly transformed, so that he was no more the ghostly otherworldly knight, famed of the green chapel, but rather the same merry lord and host of the house, where young Gawain had laid his head the night before. Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini, Hosanna in excelsis. Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini, Hosanna in excelsis. And so it was that young Gawain realized the dual identity of his opponent, and straightway blood rushed to his cheeks for shame, for truly he believed himself unworthy of that man's absolution. But the merry lord quickly reassured him, saying that he knew all about his wife's behaviour, and he told him straight that she had gone deliberately to his chamber to put his honour to the test, and in that the lovely lady had been directed, as he himself had been throughout, by the much feared enchantress Morgan le Fay, who dwelt in his own house. Now the kisses you had from my wife, he went on, were won innocently enough, and for them you have received 2 feigned blows of my axe. But as for the silken sash, which even now you conceal about your person, you did naught but try to save your own life, as any man would, and for that you have received merely a sharp nick o' the neck. But rather that, he concluded, than lose your head completely. And most fondly then the merry lord embraced Gawain, and bade him return with him to his castle, so that he might be reconciled with his wife and with Morgan le Fay. But Gawain refused, for he had no wish to be reconciled with that lovely lady who had deceived him so shamelessly, nor with her mistress either. And so he bid farewell to his merry host, and set off eagerly for the fair halls of Camelot. Now when at last he arrived, there was great joy and celebration, and all there marvelled at the story of danger and intrigue which he told them, and they praised him repeatedly for his conduct. Even the matter of the green silken sash was readily understood and instantly forgiven, for through its inclusion in the year-long mystery, Sir Gawain had been brought to his very knees for shame. And from that day onward, each and every knight of Camelot's round table wore a green silken sash, in the likeness of that so perilously acquired by Gawain, so that thereafter they were enabled to keep their pride in check. And so it is written in the best books of romance, of which the chronicles of Britain bear record. And now may he who wore the crown of thorns bring us to his bliss. And you stay, and you stay, and you stay. Stay. peccato mundi agnus te, qui tolles peccato